Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking all about my unmedicated birth and how I prepared for it. So I had my son in December, the very end of it, and he is my first, and so there was so much that I had to learn, especially because he was a surprise. So I wasn't planning on getting pregnant and I wasn't prepared for it at all. So once I found out I was pregnant, I did all this research and I kind of landed on doing an unmedicated natural birth because I just wanted to experience it. I wanted to see what my body could do. And I also just feel like, God created me for this. My body is able to do it, and so I'm just gonna give it a try. And also, people have been doing this for so long, without epidurals or medication or anything. Like before all the doctors and everything, women have been giving birth for a very long time. So I just kind of felt like I wanted to try it, and I was also okay with having any interventions done if they were necessary. If there was like a medical complication with my pregnancy, I was happy to get any interventions as long as baby was safe and healthy, and as long as I was safe and healthy. So if I had no complications, my plan was to have an unmedicated birth. I gave birth in a hospital because it was my first pregnancy, and I didn't really think of any other ways. I mean, throughout my pregnancy I had learned about home births and birthing centers, and honestly I would have loved to do either one of those knowing what I know now, but my insurance wouldn't have covered any of those things. So we landed on an unmedicated hospital birth, which ended up going really well. I feel like there are so many pros and cons of hospital, birthing center, home birth. There are just so many things, and you should definitely just do the research and see what is the best fit for you. I think that if I were to do anything different, I would definitely do a birthing center or a home birth next time. But I overall had a really awesome experience in the hospital. I feel like when it comes to unmedicated natural birth, it is a lot of mental preparation. So once I found out I was pregnant and knew that I wanted to do a natural birth, it was a lot of research, a lot of mental preparation, and a lot of physical preparation. So I tried to stay really, really active throughout my whole pregnancy. I was weightlifting before I got pregnant, so I continued to weightlift during my pregnancy. My midwife had told me that it was totally fine to weightlift as long as I was doing it before my pregnancy. She just said don't pick up anything new. Like if I wasn't doing CrossFit before my pregnancy, I probably shouldn't start CrossFit training, So I was running at the beginning of my pregnancy, and then I think it was my midwife who told me this, but she said that running can tighten the pelvic area, and when you give birth, you want your pelvic area to be nice and relaxed. And so I had stopped running after my first trimester and started walking instead. So I did a lot of walking every day. I still weightlifted, and I was kind of just eating as healthily as I could. I was working night shifts as a nurse, so it was really hard to eat really healthy and eat a well-balanced diet, because I feel like if you work night shifts, you understand, like you just want all the bad snacks all the time. But you gotta give yourself grace somewhere. So that was hard. Anyway, so I feel like the thing about having a natural birth is that knowledge is power. Educate yourself as much as you can. It's okay to question things. Ask your provider all the questions, any question that you have. No question is a dumb question, just ask. So I really loved listening to podcasts, and I feel like it was a great way for me to learn things daily without spending a ton of time doing it, because I would just listen to a podcast on my way to work. There were two podcasts that I really, really enjoyed. One of them is called Evidence-Based Birth, and it is created by a nurse who has her PhD, and she does all this research on birth and all the different topics when it comes to birth. She does a lot of discussions, and all of it is evidence-based, like the name says. I really love that podcast because it not only educates you, but it tells you all of the research behind it. And if you are somebody that likes to know the facts and the reasoning behind certain things, that is the podcast for you. Another podcast that I really enjoyed is called What the Bump. It is a podcast that was created by a doula, and she just interviews a bunch of people and asks them about their birth story. And so you hear a bunch of different kinds of birth stories. And I usually like to listen to positive birth stories and unmedicated ones, but I would also listen to other ones like C-sections and vaginal births with interventions, just because you never know what could happen, and I wanted to educate myself on the whole 9 yards. And I also feel like listening to birth stories is really good, because if you've never given birth before, it's so hard to know what actually happens when you go into labor and what happens in the hospital and all of that. I feel like I really had no idea. I feel like we have this idea of what it might look like because of TV shows and movies and stuff, but what it actually looks like is just so different. And I feel like it's a lot slower and not as chaotic as you would think it would be. I feel like listening to birth stories kind of gave you a better idea of what's actually gonna happen during the day that you end up going into labor, which was really helpful. Another thing I would definitely suggest is ask your friends and family for all the advice. Educate yourself, ask questions. I asked anyone and everyone what their experience was. I feel like a lot of the people that I knew and asked about their labor and delivery story didn't have an unmedicated birth. So I feel like I had to do a lot of that research on my own. I knew that I wanted to go as natural as possible, so I didn't want to get induced. I wanted to give birth whenever baby was ready to come. And I feel like everyone that I talked to either got induced or got an epidural. So it was really good to hear those stories, just because, I was able to educate myself as much as possible, but I did have to do a lot of the other research on my own, which is why those podcasts ended up being really, really helpful. There's also a bunch of birth stories on YouTube that you can watch, and there's just so many resources nowadays. You can always find what you're looking for. Something else that was really helpful was the Christian hypnobirthing app. I ended up getting it a month before I went into labor, and I just remember listening to it and thinking, I'm not gonna like this when I'm in labor. I don't know, it just turned me off at first, but during my actual labor it was so helpful. Just the encouragement and the scripture and the prayers, them telling me that God created my body to do this, hearing all of those things, it was just so helpful in that moment. And so give it a chance, try listening to it. It might feel weird and cheesy at first, but you might really enjoy it when you go into labor, and it might give you that extra boost of confidence that you need, because like I said, natural and unmedicated birth is truly a mental game. A lot of the birth stories that I listened to compared it to running a marathon. It really is like running a marathon, and I feel like when you are in pain for that long, it can really mess with your head. It can be really easy to kind of give in and be like, you know what, just give me the epidural because I can't do this anymore. So definitely prepare your mind, prepare your body. Another resource that I really liked was the Birth Partner book. This was a book that I read with my husband. We didn't read through the whole thing. You can kind of skip around in the book and just kind of pick and choose what is most relevant to you guys. So that's kind of what we did. And honestly, there were a lot of things that we really didn't get to. I ended up going into labor a lot earlier than I expected. I was 37 weeks and 6 days, and we had kind of brushed the surface of perineal massage. I think we did a perineal massage twice, I don't know if it helps or not, but I only had a tiny tear on my labia, and my midwife said that she couldn't even call it a first-degree tear. So it was very superficial, and the only reason that she ended up stitching it up was because of aesthetic reasons. But she said that I would probably have preferred it if she went ahead and stitched it, and my doula had said the same thing. So I ended up getting it stitched, but it was like the tiniest little stitch, and I really didn't have any internal tearing or issues or anything like that. So that was a huge blessing. I don't know if that was the perineal massage or not, but you might as well try it. So kind of going back to the birth partner book, I would highly recommend just reading it through with your partner or your husband, because as much as the birth is going to be a marathon for you, it's also going to be a marathon for your partner. You never know if your labor is going to be 10 hours, 20 hours, 30 hours, and your partner is going to be going through all of that with you. And so making sure that your partner is educated and knows what to expect is so important, especially because they're going to be your support person. They're going to be there mentally supporting you, physically supporting you, and trust me, they're going to want to know what to expect, because they might be up with you for a day, 2 days, 3 days. You just never know what's going to happen, and they need to be mentally strong with you. The birth partner book is going to educate both of you guys just on labor and delivery as a whole. It teaches you a lot of different aspects of labor and delivery, and it's a great way to kind of just prep yourselves and educate yourselves on birth. So definitely recommend. And the next thing is definitely get a doula. We loved our doula so much. She was so helpful and so well educated. We only met with her twice before I gave birth, and then she was there during my birth and everything. She was able to educate us on a few different things and bring up some things that we hadn't even thought about. And she was just able to give us so much guidance, especially since she's been to so many births before. She knew exactly what to expect, and she was also able to teach us different birthing positions. She was able to coach my husband and me throughout the whole process. My son's head was tilted a little bit weird, and so it made it hard for him to descend through the pelvic area. And so she helped me do a few different positions to kind of get his head straightened out, and so he would be able to come out a little bit easier, a little bit faster, because there was a little halt in me getting dilated because his head was all weird. So she was super helpful with that. And even before we went to the hospital, when I texted her that my water had broken, she was able to just say, hey, get some rest, make sure to just get your sleep in because you might not get sleep for a while. And she was also able to just be like, whenever you wake up, just do these different positions to kind of prep your body and take a hot shower. So she was just able to guide us through the whole thing, and it was just really nice to have that extra support person there to be able to tell you things, to be able to support you and also advocate for you. Since she knew my birth plan, she was able to make sure that I stuck with it, and also made sure that all the other medical professionals in the room would stick with it too and not do anything that I didn't want them to do, which is really great, because when you're in labor, your headspace is somewhere else. You are mentally and physically exhausted, and it's really hard to advocate for yourself when you are so exhausted. And your support person, your husband or partner, they're also going to be exhausted, and they're also not as educated about this topic as your doula is going to be. So I definitely recommend getting a doula. She's going to be there to support you and advocate for you and give you so much guidance. So definitely recommend. And if you listen to the Evidence-Based Birth podcast, they have a whole podcast on how doulas improve birth outcomes. So there's evidence behind why getting a doula is so helpful and will give you the best chance at a positive birth outcome. So the next thing that I did to prepare was making my birth plan, and also being okay if my birth didn't go as planned. I think a lot of people make their birth plan and expect it to go exactly how they planned for it to be, but that's just not realistic. You never know what's going to come up. You never know what complications might come up. And so just being able to let go and trust God in it, and remember that regardless of what happens, as long as there's a healthy baby and healthy mama, that is what matters. And that is something that I had to tell myself over and over again, is just kind of being okay. You know, if I end up having a C-section, if I end up needing to get induced, that all that matters is healthy baby, healthy mama. So definitely make a birth plan, but don't convince yourself that that's exactly how it's going to go. And then for actual labor, I definitely recommend laboring at home as long as possible if you want a natural and unmedicated birth, just because statistics do show that you will have less interventions if you go to the hospital later on. It kind of makes sense, right? Like, the less time you're in the hospital, the less things they're going to do to you. And also, being at the hospital can be such a stressful environment that it can even make your contractions slow down. I feel like being at home in a place that you're comfortable in, a place that you're going to be relaxed in, that's what's going to make the contraction stronger, and it's what's going to make baby descend, because your body is so relaxed. And when you're at home, you're going to be as relaxed as you can be, and so your body's going to be nice and relaxed, and that's going to help baby come out. Whereas if you're at the hospital and your body's stressed out because it's a new environment, it's gonna make your contractions slow down, and then your labor might slow down, which can be really hard mentally. So labor at home as long as possible, let baby really get down there, and then go to the hospital. And then the next thing I would definitely recommend is bring lots of snacks and hydrate as much as you can. My doula told me to bring soft snacks like string cheese or yogurt or pudding, applesauce, things like that, because if you end up getting nauseous or throwing up during your labor, it's not going to hurt as bad. I didn't throw up during my labor. I know that that can be a very normal symptom. Definitely get snacks. That's what's going to get you through your whole day or multiple days. It's so important to keep up those calories and stay hydrated. I ended up getting coconut water to bring because it keeps you hydrated, but also has those extra calories that I might need. Like I said, you're running a marathon. You're gonna burn through all those calories, and you're gonna need extra energy. So anything you can do to keep up that energy is gonna be so important. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. Let me know if you guys have any questions. To any of you guys out there that are pregnant and preparing for birth, I'm praying for y'all, and I'm really excited for you guys. It's gonna be such a beautiful season of your life. Enjoy being pregnant, and just remember that during all those very painful contractions, it just means that baby is getting closer and closer to meeting you. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time.